good actor, you're good at being other people. If you're a good speaker, you're good at being yourself. I like that saying. But I've learned since joining Toastmasters a couple of years ago that sometimes it takes practice and effort to be yourself. Does that sound like a paradox? I'm going to talk about some of the elements of vocal variety, and I'm pretty sure that you already use all of them. No matter what we're doing, chatting around the dinner table, brainstorming around a conference room, we all use our voices in various ways to put across our thoughts and our feelings without even thinking about it. But there's something about standing up in front of a group of people that interferes with that natural ability, that makes us careful, that pushes us back toward a flat, uninspiring monotone. So it's a good idea for a public speaker to be consciously aware of even the subconscious techniques of vocal variety. Today I'll start with vocal projection, and then I'm going to go on to some of the basics, like the famous 4 Ps: pitch, pace, power, and pauses. And then I'm going to suggest 3 things you can do to make sure that your vocal variety isn't just something you paste onto a speech for effect, but that it comes from deep inside, and so it helps you be yourself. So let's start with the voice. That's your instrument. If you were playing a cello, you'd want to be a Stradivarius. And we only got what we were born with. I was born with a soft voice, and it's still soft. But there are a few tried and true techniques for fine-tuning a voice into the best instrument it could be. I learned them in college when I studied singing. There's posture. Stand straight. Keep your head up when you speak. None of this. That keeps the airway completely unconstricted. Relax your shoulders. As soon as you get tight through here, it'll show up in your voice right away. My teacher used to tell me to pretend that I was swallowing a watermelon sideways. That's a scary thought, but that image can help us keep our mouth and throat relaxed and expanded. When you breathe in, imagine filling your lungs all the way to the bottom. With your hands here, you'll feel your stomach expand more than your chest if you're doing it right. And then when you breathe out, your stomach will deflate. And that way you support your voice on a strong, continuous column of air, kind of like water flowing up out of a well. And finally, your vocal cords vibrate in your throat. But the quality of your voice depends on how you use these little resonating chambers up behind your face. Singing teachers like to say, "Sing into the mask." If you Google that phrase, you'll find some simple exercises for getting your voice up and forward and finding your own sweet spot of richness and resonance. Sing into the mask. Look that up. So those are the mechanics of the voice. Now let's talk about some of the ways that we vary our voice as we speak. That first P is pace. In general, a faster speaking pace underscores urgency, excitement, humor. And a slower pace is better for content that's serious or complex or significant for your speech. But in any case, if you mix up fast speaking and slow speaking, it just makes it easier to listen to. You can also find individual words to emphasize, to stretch out. My 11th grade chemistry teacher used to tell us how to connect the dots on a graph, data points. He would say, "Then draw one smooth curve." Every time he said that, we laughed at him. But you know what? I've been drawing smooth curves ever since. It works. Pitch is literally about how high or low your voice is, but it's related to timbre or tone, the overall quality of your voice. If you include some storytelling in your speeches, which, by the way, is always a good thing to do, you might have 2 characters and yourself as a narrator. You're going to want 3 very distinct voices. And pitch is a good way to do that. And it's hard to overdo that. I've heard too many speeches in Toastmasters where the evaluator said something like, "Your dialogue was great, but I could hardly tell the mother from the daughter. They sounded just the same." So don't hold back when it comes to varying your voice. And then you can use that same technique to distinguish between emotions. For example, a lower pitch for a baleful mood and a higher pitch for silliness or optimism. Power is mostly about loudness or volume, but it can also mean intensity, which doesn't have to be loud. Think Clint. Here also, you'll vary your voice to reinforce emotions. More power for anger or joy, less power for fear or uncertainty or secrecy. And just like pace, you can pick out individual words to speak more powerfully based on their emotional impact or maybe on their pivotal role in the speech. But, careful. Focus on the contrast, because if you speak powerfully for too long, the effect will be lost. Now this brings us to pauses, my favorite. We all know the comedian's pause. I saw my ex and her new boy toy at the party last night. I'll have to say they're a very fastidious couple. She's fast and he's hideous. So he sets you up for the punchline. It just takes a few seconds, but without that pause, the joke would be weaker. Or maybe in this room I should say even weaker. A pause gives your audience time to process what you just said. Once in a speech I said this: trust the culture of Toastmasters. I'm talking about the unconditional support that we give each other. Where else can you find that? Sure, your boss probably says, be open, be honest, make mistakes, take risks. Sure. Try saying something stupid in a board meeting, let me know where that gets you. But this place is practice for the real world. I thought that was okay. And then I got some good advice. So when I gave that same speech a couple weeks later at my other club, that part started more like this. Trust the culture of Toastmasters. I'm talking about the unconditional support that we give each other. Where else are you going to find that? Sure, your boss probably says, and so on and so on. Now there were two flavors of pause there. The first one let the audience process a key point. The culture of Toastmasters, what's he talking about? The second pause gave them time to answer a question. Now, do I actually mean that I think they were sitting there saying, where else can I find that? School? No. My mother? Probably not literally. But think of a speech as a dialogue, not a monologue. If you want to hold your audience's interest, you've got to give them a break now and then so that they can do their part of the speech. If they're always drinking from a fire hose, you're going to lose them. Oh, and here's a sneaky one. If you look out and you see people reading their programs, whispering, checking their phones, stop talking. Your silence will bring them right back to you. But be careful with that one because it usually only works the first time. So, I've given you several techniques to think about. But that's not enough! The last thing you want during a speech is to be thinking about technique. So let's get back to that idea of being yourself. I'm going to suggest 3 methods that you can employ while writing a speech, while writing a speech, while rehearsing a speech, and while delivering a speech, to help make sure that your vocal variety stems not just from thought, but from your genuine emotions. As you draft a speech, not afterward, find places where you can vary your voice, or you might vary your voice. The affect can precede the text. For example, you might know before you write it that the middle part of your speech is something that you're going to deliver in a wistful, sad way, just because of the overall content. That way, your feelings can affect your choice of words, and the sound of the speech will evolve naturally together with the text. I like to insert a bold, red, capital P in a draft where I might want to pause. And I underline words that I might want to emphasize. Leave myself little notes in square brackets like faster or more lively. That method has limitations though, because it's still a sort of a conscious, deliberative process. The second method gets around that limitation. In other words, I don't want to be saying, here I'm going to slow down a little bit. This word I'm going to act angry. It's too artificial. So let's go to the second method. When I have pretty much finished a speech, and I'm at the point of rehearsing it, whether in front of a mirror or a video camera or just pacing around the house, just once or twice, I like to take it way over the top. I'm talking primal emotion, total silliness. I don't think I can do in front of a camera what I do when I'm alone with my cat. But let's take that part from a few minutes ago and I'll pick up where I left off. And when I rehearsed it that way a few months ago, it went kind of like this. Where else can you find that? Sure, your boss probably says, be honest, be open, make mistakes. Yeah, right. Try saying something stupid in a board meeting. Let me know how that works out for you. But this place, it's practice for the real world. Now that is ridiculous. You would never deliver a speech like that, unless maybe you were in a poetry slam, if you wanted to be invited back. But let's look at what I learned from rehearsing just those few lines in that crazy way. I learned that I really hate those hypocritical bosses. This is the value of thought of feeling instead of thought. I actually remembered during that exercise that I had had a couple of them. Nancy Holt, and they persuaded me over time that it was time to retire. And I learned that the contrast between the toxic environment during the last few years of my federal so-called career and what I find here is overwhelming. And I really want all of you to understand that. Now this technique, this crazy technique, works best for people like me who are naturally introverted, who naturally don't express themselves very much. The raw emotions that you dredge up, if you do that right, will carry over into your final delivery, toned way down, of course, and that will add natural expressiveness. Now the third method is easy. If you're stuck behind a lectern, looking down at your notes, your gestures, your facial expressions, your eye contact are all constrained, and so is your voice. If you let yourself be physically active, your voice comes alive. It's almost as if your voice were synchronized automatically with your movements. And you know what? It kind of is. So whenever you can, get out there, move around, interact with the audience, and your vocal variety will effortlessly improve. So this is a little better. Now you've got some techniques to think about and some ways to stop thinking about them. So I'll close with one more analogy to music. If you're a concert pianist, you still play scales, arpeggios, little studies all the time. Artur Rubinstein did this on a tabletop before every concert. Is that being yourself? No. But at some point, you'll transcend technique. You'll rise above the mechanical stuff to become a simple, open channel directly from the heart of the composer to the hearts of your audience. And when that happens, it's magic. Now, as a speaker, maybe you come up to the stage in a toe-grinding, palm-sweating cloud of terror, or maybe you're already Winston Churchill and James Earl Jones wrapped into one. It doesn't matter. We don't come to Toastmasters to achieve a certain standard. We come here to start wherever we are and get better. If you work on those techniques and methods, just like you work on the technical studies if you're a pianist, and if you learn from your mentor, and you learn from your evaluators, and you learn from watching other people learn, you will get better. You can't help it. Over time, you'll find yourself giving speeches that more and more effectively put across what you want to say so that the audience understands it and how you feel about it so the audience feels that way too. That's one of the hallmarks of a great speech. And vocal variety is one of the skills that make it happen.